Next up, we have Ultra Player's predictions. He gave me a massive pace spin of predictions, and he says Noah will not make playoffs.
What is going on, everyone? My name is NoPunIntended, and welcome to coverage of my playoff game for the Minor Pokemon League, the only playoff game before the finals. If you guys enjoy my Draft League content, then please remember to leave a like or a comment on the video, because that would be nice, and I would appreciate it. The Philadelphia Aegislash have done it. They have defied the odds and reached the playoffs. It feels great to keep our season alive and stay in the running for our first championship. But in order to do that, we have to take on and defeat the two coaches that gave us losses in the regular season. Up first is JohnnyGB, the coach of the Oregon Duckletts, and recent addition to Patoka Minorities, who are my former bosses back when I was an analyst in the National Pokeball League. The last time we played was all the way back in Week 1. He won the game 1-0, but it honestly wasn't even as close as that final score would indicate. I snagged a ton of full paralysis in that game and didn't really have any hacks go against me either, so I've still got a lot to prove against Johnny. But we're going to get the opportunity to do it on this stage. We are just barely underdogs for this game. Johnny finished the regular season at 5-2 with a plus 10 differential. We finished the regular season at 5-2 with a plus 9 differential, so we're not really that far apart. But I still really want to win to get revenge on him for what he did to me back in Week 1. So with me having stated my case, let's talk about our teams. Johnny made a few free agent transactions to bolster his roster. The Emboar he has now doesn't really worry me too much, but the Azelf does outspeed a lot of my Mons, most notably the Keldeo, who I relied upon quite a bit the last time. And Magneton is a much sturdier defensive steel type than Doublade ever was. And its typing means that it has a pretty good match against my team as well, since I don't want to bring Mega Swampert at all. On top of that, he still has a lot of the same threatening mons he had before. The Rain Core, again, beats my Rain Core. Don't want to bring Rain against him, just won't end very well for me. Mega Metachamp still hits any team really hard. Fortunately, I do have Musharna to take hits from it, but still something you gotta worry about. And then Mimikyu. The kill leader for Season 1 of the Minor Pokemon League is back, and it is as threatening as ever. But now, getting into my team, one of the interesting things that I just noticed about it is that the mods I brought are each of my first 6 draft picks. They're the pillars that I built my team structure with, and they are all coming this week. Some people may say they're value mons, and yes, they technically are, but I think they're bigger than that. Getting into my sets though, first up we have Musharna, fully physically defensive. This is my main check to Mega Metachamp. I can potentially paralyze it, I can hit it with a Psychic, I can even set up barriers against it in case I think it goes into Mimikyu, although that's not a guaranteed strategy to work just because Shadow Claw from Mimikyu has a high critical hit ratio and that gets past defense boosts, but still, it doesn't seem like that crazy of an idea. I don't mind putting Moonlight on it even against a team that has Rain, just because if he doesn't get Rain up for whatever reason, then Musharna may have an opportunity to restore its health, and even then it's not entirely necessary. Next up is Politoed. This is one of my new answers to his Rain Core. With Water Absorb as its ability, Politoed can easily stomach Surfs from Kingdra, from Ludicolo, and from Pelipper. And if it happened to be Choice Locked, which he did bring a Scarfed Pelipper and a Specs Kingdra the last time, then I can set up a sub on them freely and then either go for Scald, Toxic, or go for Hidden Power Electric if I want to hit the Pelipper 4 times super effectively. I've learned to love type immunities this season thanks to my Zero Aura, and Politoed's now going to get the opportunity to suck up those water type attacks. But speaking of Zero Aura and type immunities, I'm bringing a bit of a different set this week as well. Now that he has Magneton, I can't just rely on Electric type moves all the time, so I brought a more diverse physical based move pool while running the Assault Vest. This is my primary switch into his Magneton. Because I do resist Flash Cannon, I'm immune to his electric type attacks, and I can just hit him with a close combat. It can also serve as an emergency switch into his Rain Core, which is not ideal personally, but if I have to, I will do it. And Zero Aura is my best Pokemon, the only one I've brought to all of my games prior to this. It would be sacrilege for me not to bring it at this point. Next up is Vileplume. It's still running a very specially defensive set. The main thing it's going to do is check that annoying Ludicolo. I am running Hidden Power Ground as my 3rd attack on this set in order to super effectively hit his Skuntank and his Magneton, who both resist my stabs. And Vileplume is also technically my best answer to his Mimikyu. Should that thing set up, I definitely want to go for Strength Zap to lower its attack. Moving on though to Noivern. I am a bit surprised in hindsight that I didn't actually bring this one in Week 1, because it actually does have a decent matchup, and especially so now that I've seen his free agent transactions. Not so much against Magneton because of 4 times resist Hurricane, but against Emboar and against Azelf, it makes a ton of sense to bring it. I am running Choice Scarf in case of a potential Scarfed Azelf, as well as to outspeed a Swift Swim Ludicolo should I decide to bring that and hit it with a Hurricane. It also outspeeds Modest Kingdra, which is what he ran last time, but it doesn't outspeed Timid Kingdra, so I'll have to watch out for Kingdra if he chooses to switch it in on my Noivern. Beyond that, Hurricane is just a very solid stab move. Shadow Ball hits Mimikyu and Mega Medicham super effectively, and Focus Blast lets me hit the Magneton super effectively. And I can also switcheroo a Choice Scarf onto something to disrupt it, although I can't do that to Mimikyu because it is his Z-Captain. And finally, for the fun set of the week, we have a Calm Mind Agwav Berry Klefki, who can hopefully set up Calm Minds on his Rain Core, then use Recycle to restore Agwav Berry to get back some health, and then fire off boosted Dazzling Gleams. It also has Sunny Day in case I want to weaken the power of his Water-type moves that his Rain Core could potentially go for. Now, when I looked at the 6 mons that Johnny decided to bring for this game, the biggest observation I made is that he didn't have the Mega Medicham available to him. This is kind of interesting because now it leaves my Musharna in a position where it doesn't really have anything specific it needs to do. I guess that means that it's the sack if I can't decide anything else to do. Beyond that, I expected all of his mons to come. Rain Core, obvious. Mimikyu, very obvious. I figured Magneton had a good defensive matchup because it is part Steel, and it does hit my Rain mons for my Water types pretty hard with Electric Stab, barring Mega Swampert, but Mega Swampert wasn't coming anyway, just because it gets walled by Ludicolo and Pelipper. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. Let's just get into the game. Now, if you watched my Week 1 battle against Johnny, you may remember that I heavily regretted forcing my Zeraora to take damage from Gigavolt's Bug Buzz. This time, though, I intend to keep Zeraora healthy unless I feel it's absolutely necessary to take damage with it. Against Azelf, though, I'm not too worried. I know Volt Switch will really hurt it, even though I'm running a minus special attack nature, so I just go for it, knowing Johnny has no electric immunities on his Keen. However, he actually switches directly into the Magneton. Considering my Zeraora was designed to take it on, pivoting out of the Magneton is a bit awkward. So I figure that I can go into Vileplume here, because Vileplume does have HP ground, and assuming that he's not a Violite, I definitely kill him with the attack. However, I start to get second thoughts about my decision right here, because I've run a Violite on Magneton quite a bit, and I figure there's a good chance that he will too, because he really could use a defensive Steel type against my team, considering the kind of squad that I brought. So I'm instead going to double back into Zeraora. It's immune to Magneton's Electric type moves and resists Flash Cannon. However, I didn't actually expect him to go for the Metal Sound here. That's a pretty cool tech on his part. Unfortunately, it shows its 85 accuracy and misses. Had he landed the attack, I probably would have switched back into my Vileplume to reset the drop, but because I'm in right now, I can just click the knockoff, and I confirm that the Magneton was holding an Violite, as he just goes for a Hidden Power Ground. Because I'm Assault Vest, I'm insulated very well against the attack. I only take about a third of my max HP. And I just go for a close combat to kill the Magneton. Very huge for me. Magneton was the key resist to Musharna's Psychic on his team. It's also the only resist he had to Noivern's Hurricane, so that allows them to more consistently wreck shop. I take a 6-5 lead, and now Johnny's going to bring in the Azelf, but he switched out of Zeraora on turn 1. This means one of two things. Either he's a Sash Rocks lead, which would be good for him as I didn't bring any removal to this game, or he's an offensive Scarf set that can outspeed me and hit me with a Psychic. I figured this since I've already revealed Knockoff, and every other Azelf set he could potentially bring would die before it could do anything. I decide that it's worth the risk to stay in and just Volt Switch. I can just bring another Mon to take any hit from the Azelf, and if he's Scarfed, I will get Initiative, because I can see what move he locks himself into. And what do you know, he does outspeed, so definitively Choice Scarfed. He actually goes for U-Turn, which does a bit more damage than I expected, as I kind of forgot I was at -1 defense thanks to the close combat. But whatever the case, he will pivot out into the Kingdra, and I can get some decent damage on it with my Volt Switch. There's not a lot of information I can gauge from that damage, but because Johnny didn't bring the Mega Medicham, Musharna doesn't really have a lot to do, and in fact it's kinda set up fodder for Mimikyu. So while I could have gone into Politoed here, I decided that in the long run I'm more comfortable letting Musharna take a hit from it. As a trade-off, I can paralyze one of his mons with Thunder Wave, but Johnny decides he doesn't want his Kingdra to get hurt any more than it already is, and he switches into the Pelipper to set up his Rain through the hole in the ceiling. Somebody should really go about fixing that. But this is perfectly okay for me. I'll be able to slow down Pelipper, and taking into account the fact he brought Scarfed Pelipper to our last meeting, the T-Wave could potentially be game-changing. But I soon learned that he's not Scarfed, because Musharna, she of base 29 speed, moves before it. In fact, judging from the turn order, he probably doesn't have much speed investment on his Pelipper at all. So I do hit it for about 35 to 40%, and I also snag a special defense drop, which is really nice, because if he tries to Roost Stall my Musharna, he'll actually lose health every turn. And if I get one full para, just one, he'll be in range of another Psychic. However, he does go for Hurricane instead. And he gets a Confusion, which is annoying, because if I hit myself, he either gets to Roost or U-turn into something else for free. Regardless, I don't want to switch anything else into a rain-boosted Scald or Hurricane, so I'm going to have Masharna tough it out and stay in, but on the first turn of potential confusion, Mushy hits itself, and then the Pelipper gets back to full health with the Roost. So not an ideal turn by any means, but that won't stop me from going for Psychic again. This time, I do break through Confusion, deal over half to the Pelipper as he scalds me. It does a decent amount of damage, but Masharna's leftovers are allowing it to eat up these repeated attacks. I'll just go for Psychic again, as Johnny switches into Azelf. It does resist the attack, but any bit of damage on Azelf is still useful, and I also snack another special defense drop, which won't influence my next play, but it does make things a bit easier for me. Whether I got the drop or not, my plan was always to switch into Noivern, and as long as he doesn't go for an ice move, which I doubt he will against a Masharna, I'll be in a nice position. The range should expire on this turn, so his Swift Swim won't work properly if he brings in the Kingdra, and even if he U-turns into that Kingdra, I can hit it first. However, on this turn, the rain doesn't run out, which means that his Pelipper is actually holding Damp Rock, and this really kinda surprised me. Ever since my Week 2 game against Sebby, I've been claiming on record that Damp Rock is a stupid and unreliable item, and one of the worst you can run on a Drizzlemon. Now we're going to put that theory to the test. If the Kingdra is modest, I will outspeed it, but Kingdra will outrun Scarfed Noivern if he's a timid nature. Either way, Hurricane doesn't knock it out from this range, so I need to pick a Mon to take an attack in order to preserve Noivern, and in hindsight I really should have gone into Politoed here, as it would only take good damage from his Dragon-type moves, and if he went for one of them, I could just switch back into Klefki and be immune from any damage. But instead, I go into Vileplume, and lose 70% of my health from the Draco. I run the calc for that, and he's definitely Choice Specs Kingdra, which is the same set he ran last time. It's most likely Modest Nature as well, although potentially if he got a good enough roll he could be Timid. The key thing here, though, is that Vileplume was sort of my best answer to his Mimikyu, as I could repeatedly Strength Sap it to keep its attack power low and my health high. But at 30%, Vileplume always dies to +2 Shadow Claw, or a non-boosted Shadow Claw if he's holding a Life Orb. So I had a lapse in judgment there, and I'm not sure there's anything on Johnny's team that Vileplume can freely Strength Sap on. Whatever the case, Vileplume's pretty screwed now, and I should have let Politoed take the Draco. But we're gonna move on from this. The good news for me is that Kingdra has locked itself into a Dragon-type move, so Klefki is an easy switch in for me on the next one. And now that I'm in with Klefki, Johnny has no choice but to swap into another of his Pokemon. So I'm gonna make a fairly conservative double into my Zeraora. Technically no double switch is conservative, but this one has relatively few drawbacks, and the potential reward greatly outweighs the risk. My Zeraora comes in on his Pelipper, and now that Johnny no longer has access to his Magneton, he doesn't have great switch into a Plasma Fists, and I want to get off some big boy damage on something. That something turns out to be his Ludicolo. It does take a decent sized hit, but the fact that he has leftovers as well as Rain Dish active will mitigate that somewhat. Nonetheless, I really thought he was just going to Leech Seed on the switch, and at this range of health, I didn't think Zeraora was really worth keeping around that much. It only does very well against Pelipper, which I can check with most of the rest of my team anyway, now that he's paralyzed. So I like to stay in and knock off the Ludicolo's leftovers. I was fine with the potential exchange, but it turns out he actually goes for the Ice Beam here. And I live. I guess he thought I would swap into Noivern or Vileplume, but I didn't really gain all that much positive from saving Zeraora for later, and I wanted to keep my offensive pressure going. Now that he doesn't have as much passive recovery going on, I can just stay in Plasma Fists and finish off his Ludicolo, which gives Zeraora its second kill of the battle. On the next turn though, Johnny and I are going to come to a bit of a crossroads, because he's going to send in the Mimikyu. This matchup is the most crucial one in this game. Mimikyu, the kill leader in the minor PL, going toe-to-toe with Zeraora, who finished 3rd overall in those kill rankings. His superstar player against my superstar player. Tough part for me though is that I'm in range of a single Shadow Sneak. I did think about sacking off my Vileplume here, but the problem is that if he Swords Dances on my switch, I don't break the disguise. Considering that Mimikyu actually has good Spadef and my entire team excluding Zeraora are special attackers, if I allow the Mimikyu to set up to +2 attack, I may not be able to stop it with the rest of my team. I can't afford him to be at +2 with his disguise intact, so I make an executive decision. Yes, it'd be great to hold on to Zeraora, but as I mentioned before, I don't need it to win. And as a result, I go for Volt Switch. This will force him to choose between killing my Zeraora immediately with a Shadow Sneak and staying in neutral attack, or Swords Dancing, but at the cost of losing his disguise. I see he doesn't sneak, and so I think he went for the Swords Dance, but actually, he goes for Shadow Claw directly, which knocks out my Vileplume. And this is when I realized that there's a 99% chance that Mimikyu does not have Shadow Sneak. I don't know why he, whoever builds his teams, wouldn't have put that move as like the most important one on that set, considering that I have a Mega Swampert with rain support on my roster, as well as a Zero Aura, Noivern, and Keldeo that naturally outspeed Mimikyu. But I am very relieved he doesn't appear to have it. Because of this development, I can actually bring back in my Zero Aura and just throw off a Plasma Fists. It'll severely weaken this Mimikyu, and while Shadow Claw will KO Zero Aura, the damage that it dealt will be enough for me to reliably send in my Noivern and revenge Mimikyu with my Hurricane. The biggest threat to my team has now fainted, and as long as I play these last few turns smartly, I should be able to easily secure my victory. All Johnny has left is his Azelf, Pelipper, and Kingdra, and I have fantastic ways to deal with all three. For the incoming Kingdra, I can just swap out of Noivern into Politoed, as he reveals that his Kingdra has Ice Beam. But because my Politoed is max Spadef, and this move is non-stab, the damage I get dealt is pitiful. And because I found out earlier that his Kingdra is holding Choice Specs, he has to switch out if he wants to threaten my Politoed. But this just allows me to put up a substitute on his incoming Pelipper. And unfortunately for Johnny, a paralyzed Pelipper doesn't really have the tools available to it to KO my Politoed in a 1v1. After we see the rain fall through the hole in the roof once again, and the leftovers animation plays, Politoed will send Pelipper out of the game with a hidden power Electric. Johnny has now lost his Rain Setter. The Kingdra can't break my sub without locking itself into a Dragon move, so Johnny's only safe option is to bring in his Scarfed Azelf and lock himself into Energy Ball. I actually go for a substitute again, thinking he might U-turn and the damage from that would break my sub, but I don't think it would have been that powerful. So that was a bit silly for me, but hey, better safe than sorry. I can fire off a Scald into Azelf anyway, and it brings it down to red health while also snagging a pretty pointless burn, all things considered. Azelf's still in range where any of my attacks can kill it, and my Noivern 4 times resists Energy Ball, so I can just go into it to stomach the Grass-type move without breaking a sweat. I now can go for Hurricane. I appreciate Johnny setting up the rain so often so I didn't have to worry about missing, and now that his Azelf has fainted, Johnny is forced to send in his Kingdra. But I have an out no matter what move he locks himself into. Ice Beam's too weak to kill any of my remaining mons in one hit except for the Noivern, Klefki's immune to Draco Meteor, and Politoed is immune to Surf. Plus, it turns out he was Modest Natured the whole time, and so my Noivern will be able to move before it, bring it down to very low health, and then tank a Rain Boosted Surf with 12 HP to spare. Noivern is a boss. I can then Hurricane again to knock out the Kingdra. Noivern records its third kill, which is more than it had the entire regular season, by the way. And with that, the Philadelphia Aegislash advanced to the Minor Pokemon League Season 1 Finals by winning 4-0 against the Oregon Duckletts. As always, I'd like to wish a good game to my opponent, JohnnyGB. Definitely think he played well, but I feel as though that 2 points of prep lost him this game. The first was that he didn't run Shadow Sneak on Mimikyu. Instead, he ran Woodhammer, and I don't know, it just seems kind of risky for his front office to suggest to him, because he told me that his front office builds all his teams. It's like, it's meant to hit Mega Swampert, I guess, but if Rain is up, Mega Swampert outbeats Mimikyu anyway, and I feel as though it'd be more important to get priority above Zero Aura, Noivern, and Keldeo, who all outspeed Mimikyu naturally. So, I don't know. Not my decision, but honestly, Shadow Sneak should have been, if not the first move, then the second after Swords Dance that his front office put on Mimikyu, but I don't judge, and it helped me win, so thanks, guys. The second point of prep that I feel as though lost in the game is that he put Damp Rock as his item on Pelipper. Note to anyone who plays with Rain in the future, Damp Rock is a terrible item. Do not run it on your Drizzlemon. There are plenty of times in the first game I had with Johnny that the Rain would run out at the most inopportune time. Like when he could just send in his Pelipper for free to get it back up, or when I needed to deal increased damage with my Keldeo Scald to his Vigable and I didn't actually manage to knock it out. Damp Rock just always seems to work against you. Like, I could just lock myself into Hurricane with my Noivern, knowing that the rain was going to last for so many turns. And running Damp Rock prevented his Pelipper from using another item that could have potentially been more beneficial to him, like the Choice Scarf he ran last time, or even a Walk-In Berry to take an Electric-type hit. So yeah, Damp Rock, not worth it usually. But that's about all I have to say for this game. Next week we have won ourselves a date with Sebby VGC and his Montreal Monfernos in the finals, and I am scared out of my mind for this game. Sebby completely blasted me the first time around, and I certainly hope he doesn't do it again. But hey, we are underdogs. This is something that we've asked for the entire season, and I'm going to hopefully relish that role, and hey, maybe we can actually beat him and claim our first league title. Anything's possible. But with that being said, I do want to thank you all so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Check out Johnny and the other minor Pokemon League coaches' channel links. They'll be in the description. And until I see you next time, take care.